Hey, here we are. Dave Kittle and Tony Maritato. Guys, welcome back to PT Breakfast Club. Jimmy McKay is on the road today, so he's not going to be with us. But Dave, how is it going up in New York?
All is well up here.
Awesome. So today I was hoping to pick your brain and really get into some business stuff, stuff that you and I have talked about a while ago, it might be years ago. Look at valuations, look at exit strategies, look at what's going on. But let's open the show today talking about ATI getting delisted. Not news. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone. What can you say about that? And even just for somebody who is like, well, what does that even mean? What does it mean when your company gets delisted from the New York Stock Exchange?
Just for full candor, I don't know. It's first of all, I think it's fairly rare. It doesn't happen that often, and I actually don't know what it really means. I mean, they lose their public ability to have tradable stock. Other than that, I don't know if it leads to any other lawsuits, litigation, any other issues. So I am kind of aware of a lot of pros and cons of why a company would go public, and then once they are public, and different share classes and different options with using that company as like an investment. But then once it's delisted, I actually don't know too much about it. So maybe you do.
I know a little bit. So basically, once the stock price gets down below a certain number, it becomes what would be called a penny stock. Now, back in the day, it used to be under $5, it would be a penny stock. And these exchanges don't want to mess with that kind of low valuation. So in the past, I believe ATI went through a reverse split. So they had consolidated the shares. So if you owned 100 shares, all of a sudden you own 10 shares, but the 10 shares now had a higher valuation. So they compressed everything just to keep the price above the threshold to be listed on the New York Stock Exchange. But then it kept going down. Now it got delisted, which means it's still a tradable stock. It's still, I think they used to call it the pink papers or the pink list or pink something. But it's just not available to the New York Stock Exchange and other larger exchange. So, it's probably on the way to bankruptcy. I mean, I think that's basically what it is. Now, a couple people, when we talked about it last time, said, what if somebody came along, purchased it for whatever, couple $1 million, and then did something with it? I think probably the reason why something like that won't happen, and I don't know the financials of ATI, but probably there's outstanding debt. There's other things that we're not privy to that just make it not worth the while of somebody else acquiring them. But that being said, let's go into our world and let's talk about valuations, how a small provider like me would look at building a business that has a exit potential, maybe an acquisition from somebody like you, maybe an acquisition from somebody else. What kind of stuff can we share with the people watching to help them build a business that has long-term value?
Absolutely. So we're looking for partnerships and acquisitions. So we're on the buy side, and any owners watching or listening, they're most likely going to be, or more likely to be, on the sell side, looking to actually sell their practice, their business. There's a lot of common frustrations on both sides. I don't want to say that it's all you guys, that it's all the owner side. There's certain things, like, for example, I can give anonymous examples of where we the deal kind of dragged on, the due diligence dragged on for a lot of extra time, a lot of extra weeks or months, and then we decide, something happens and it's we have to walk away or whatever. And there's been a ton of examples like that I can't really share about the whole practice.
Let's just make something up, because I know I've
Yeah.
been there. I've been on the trying to sell side, and we get down this road and then my numbers don't add up and I don't have good accounting in place, and it just pushes it further and further down the road. And eventually we're like, look, we just can't do it. I've publicly shared that there have been multiple times where I tried to sell the practice, sell a unit within the practice, and I just can't do it because I can't show the financials to the bank so the buyer can get funding. I can't show the tax returns in a way that makes the business look valuable. And we just end up wasting everybody's time. And of course, with that, everybody's money. And if you're bringing attorneys in, accountants in, that all costs money. So just make something up. It's not based on it is based on experience, but it's not somebody's actual situation.
I have a great example that is from an experience that we had, but I'm going to kind of change the numbers a bit and talk about it so high level that even if that owner were to listen, they're not going to know that we're talking about them. So let's say there's a physical therapy practice that's doing somewhere around $1 million in revenue, and we sign an NDA. We kind of look at their financials. They may or may not have a broker. The broker may or may not have constructed this confidential information memorandum, a SIM, a CIM, a SIM. So we're looking at the financials, and let's say the adjusted EBITDA. So basically, it's like whatever the owner is, whatever like the net income is after expenses, and then this would be adding back in like we've talked about it before, like if you're buying some products for the clinic, some products for your home, like cleaning supplies or whatever, all those add backs, anything that's personal items that is not business critical, that all gets added back. So anyway, regardless, about $1 million in revenue. And let's say the adjusted EBITDA, so like the net income after those add backs are put back in, let's say it's around $200,000. So we're looking at a practice and it's got a whole bunch of other components and we can maybe get into like other components that would kind of swing the valuation like one way or the other. So this particular anonymous example, we're talking to the owner and we're like, based off of XYZ, and we can get into some of the things in a minute, but based off of what we're seeing, we would offer a 3x multiple for this practice, right? So again, you take the $200,000 adjusted EBITDA number times 3, so $600,000. So that's like a verbal offer, depending on how the conversation goes, depending on the relationship, depending on if it's multiple conversations. Obviously, this is after we sign an NDA, speak to the broker, speak to the practice owner, all that. So, Mr. and Mrs. Practice Owner, based off of this, which we're going to get into in a minute, your adjusted EBITDA is $200,000. Before we even say a verbal offer, though, Tony, we would make sure, like, okay, so you agree, like, because of all these other things, like, this is your number you're coming to us with? And then we would, like, we have to get agreement on the 200,000 adjusted EBITDA first. So I kind of glossed over that. Does that make sense?
It does. Let me ask you about that. What are some of the influencing factors that you're looking at to say, okay, a 3-time multiple, 5-time multiple, 1-time multiple?
So I can pull it up, but there's like an approximate for physical therapy businesses, but really just for service-based businesses. So it could be HVAC, plumbing, landscaping, physical therapy, chiropractic, I don't know, acupuncture, massage. I think those probably sell less often, but any like service-based business that you see in a lot of, strip malls, like there's kind of like an approximate chart. Like basically like the higher the adjusted EBITDA number is, then the more like the higher of the multiple number. So we would take the adjusted EBITDA number. And if you're doing like $1 million in adjusted EBITDA, so that means you're probably doing like 4 or 5 million in revenue. That 1 million of adjusted EBITDA, basically net income after the add backs are put back in, that $1 million of adjusted EBITDA. Again, typically it's obviously a bigger practice. They have multiple locations probably. They can warrant or they can demand a higher multiple. They can demand a higher valuation compared to a practice that's doing 100 or 150 or $200,000 in adjusted EBITDA. So there's kind of like an ascending scale that you get a higher number multiple based off of the size of your adjusted EBITDA. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. I'm going to say, why is that? I've got ideas about why that would be, but why would it make a difference if we're talking absolute dollars? Why would $100 versus $1 million make a difference on a multiple?
One of the things is the more adjusted the more net income, net profits, adjusted EBITDA is the fancy word. The more net income that's in the business, the less risky it is. That's one of the biggest components. Like there's more scale. So if a buyer comes in, and they shake the tree and they cause waves or whatever. Some people might leave at the $1 million EBITDA practice, and then some people might also leave from the $200,000 EBITDA practice. Well, that's a smaller team size. So if some people leave, that's like a critical number of people that leave. If I'm going to partner or buy a practice, I want smooth sailing through the transition to go from the current owner to us being majority owners, whether we're buying 51% or if we're buying 70 or 80 or maybe even 100% of the equity of the practice. So we want a smooth transition. We don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to scare employees. We don't want the employees to then say, oh, there's this new owner. I'm going to start putting my resume out everywhere else. I'm going to look for a job somewhere else, because we want those team members, assuming that they're good or great, we want those team members to stay with the transition for smooth sailing, because even the bigger practices like USPH, they all raise debt. Like USPH is public. They take out hundreds of millions of dollars in debt. And oftentimes we might as well, meaning we plan to, yes, we're going to take some money out of our pockets, out of our bank accounts, some of the equity. Yes, of course. But all that kind of factors in. So regardless, those are some of the components of it.
And I would think that just, it has to be worth your while. Like back to when I'm looking at a potential business opportunity, it's like, what is the max return I'm going to get? What is the expected return I'm going to get? I'm not going to do something that's going to put $20 in my bank account, because it's not worth the time or the effort, because it's just as much work to go into something that's going to put $2 million in my bank account. So I've got to think that that's an element in this. But okay, so we've got that. We're looking at the story where we agree 200,000 in EBITDA, 3 times multiple. Where does that go from there?
I'm glad you asked. So we've had many of these over the past year or two. So we would, and again, so whether it's Chad Madden's podcast, because he sold his 6 or 5 or 6 locations to USPH. He talked about selling out to USPH on his podcast. He talked about multiples. He also mentioned this approximate chart of like $300,000 or less of net income, or the adjusted EBITDA number. Typically, you're kind of in the range of a 3x multiple. So you take 300 times 3. So it would be a valuation of 900,000, even though you're doing, $1 million or 1.5 or 2 million in revenue. So you got 300,000 or less in net income. You got a 3x multiple, approximately $400,000 in net income. You might be able to demand a 4x multiple. Then if you're kind of in the $500,000 to $800,000 range of adjusted EBITDA, you potentially could kind of demand, or again, depending on other factors, which we'll get into, you can kind of command or demand a 5 or 6 or maybe even a 7x EBITDA multiple. And then if you're like over $1 million in net income, or the adjusted EBITDA number, you could be in the 7, 8, X EBITDA multiple. So you take that number times the multiple number. And each time the number goes from 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 or 8, that's called a turn, one turn of the multiple. So, and each of those numbers is, like you said about return on investment. Each time the number goes from 3 to 4 or 4 to 5, that's going to be like, it's going to take another year for us to just make our money back on the investment. And that's why I was saying, like, we might use, we plan to use the SBA loans or commercial debt or whatever, just like the big guys are using debt. And each of the multiple numbers is going to take an extra turn, like an extra annual year. If the business stays the same, it's going to take another year. So from 3 to 4, it's going to take from the 3rd year to the 4th year in the future to just make our money back on the money that we deployed to buy that practice, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Can we talk about debt for just a second? I don't want to interrupt the story, but sure. How do you look at debt? Because I know debt's a big, thing. You've got, I can't think of Dave Ramsey, the financial guy, talking about debt from one perspective. You've got other business owners talking about debt from a different perspective. I'm trying to teach my kids, you're eventually going to do the same. But it's like, look, debt is not a bad thing. Debt is fertilizer. Debt is how you grow the garden. Debt is, when used correctly, debt is something that we need to escalate and buy back time. How do you look at debt, taking on debt, balancing risk of that debt with the ability to grow any business, not even just a physical therapy business?
Yeah, it's a financial lever that is used. It's I'm looking where you're at right now, right? So like, let's say you were like in this room that you're in. So like
Yeah.
you might have used debt to have part like a construction loan, right? For the new cabinets, the new lighting, the new crown molding, paint, flooring, carpet, whatever it is. Or building out more of the physical therapy practice. Maybe you're going to revamp the front desk, whatever it is, signage inside, signage outside, whatever, right? So there's the construction part of it. Then there's also, like, we've spoken to some practices where they're like on the cusp of opening up another location. So their net income is going to look less. So then we have to take that into consideration. So debt is like you said, oftentimes a good thing. It's different when we're talking about like, credit card debt. And if you don't pay it off, it's going to be, whatever, 15 or 25 or whatever percent, like crazy. So owners that have extra money that they don't want to be taxed on, they're like, hey, we might as well like buy another location, or we can open up another location, or we're going to make capital improvements to the office if they're renting and they have approval from their landlord, or in your case, you are the landlord, Tony. So you just talk to yourself. You look one way, you look the other. You say, can I do this? Yes, we can do this. Okay, we have the money to cover it. Okay, talk to the landlord. We're approved. So that's a good thing. And you, instead of being taxed on it, you could say, hey, let's invest in one of those ways, and then we'll make it back in whatever time based on your projections. So that's a good thing. However, it will have to come off of the purchase price, right? So like if they have we've looked at practices where they have an extra $100,000 or $150,000 or $200,000 of debt from a recent construction, or improving the practice. That's like, if we're going to offer $1 million, but there's 200,000 in debt, like, then the debt we're going to either have resolved, or we're going to absorb the debt. Like, we're going to take on the debt, but then the seller is going to get 800,000.
Yeah.
Like, if we're saying the practice is worth $1 million right now today, or this quarter or whatever, but you have 200,000 in debt from last year or 2 years ago, doing, refurbishment and construction. Like, if we believe that practice is worth $1 million, we're gonna say, okay, it's $1 million, and we're gonna absorb the debt. So now we're gonna pay you 800,000. We're not gonna pay you 1.2.
Right. Right.
All right. Well, let's see what Scott said. Go ahead, if you want to read it out.
Scott's saying for smaller practices under $1 million in revenue, wouldn't it be more appropriate to look at SDI, which I don't know what SDI is, versus EBITDA?
Yeah. So seller's discretionary income, or I've seen it as SDE, seller's discretionary earnings. It's kind of yes, Scott. It's kind of in the whole conversation. It's I know they're not exactly the same, but they're kind of close enough. We just happen to use EBITDA and adjusted EBITDA for multiple reasons. One, I think, is the brokers, which, and it should not all be dictated by the brokers. It should kind of be dictated by the buyers, like whoever is going to be buying. But even like all the regional and larger buyers of physical therapy businesses across the country, they're using EBITDA and adjusted EBITDA. So we're just trying to all use like the same, language and the same ruler, like the same measurement tools, basically, to evaluate different practices. If it's under $1 million in revenue, the SDI or the SDE versus EBITDA, I mean, it's going to be pretty much in the same range. And we're using it for some of those reasons. And it's not just all me. Like, I have a forensic accountant that's on my team. So like, he helps considerably with looking at the financials and due diligence, and he has a really great grasp of EBITDA. And we know, for Scott, with these practices that are doing, I think he said, under $1 million in revenue, typically they're going to be around 200,000 to 250,000 of adjusted EBITDA. We got to dig into the books. We got to get all our financials. We're going to say, hey, Tony, or we're going to say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Practice Owner, We're not going to report you to the IRS. We know you're showing like basically no net income. We know that when you go to Costco and BJ's and all that, and you're buying like bulk cleaning supplies and toilet paper and paper towels. We know, come on, let's be honest. We know half of it is for the clinic and half of it is for your home, but then you're using 100% of it as a business write-off, saying that it's all used in your business. Every practice owner, any IRS agents watching, just tune off, just log off right now. Get off the show, because we know most practice owners across the country are all doing this. And then, there's practice owners that are in this range, Scott, that are under $1 million in revenue, and they have all their families, gym memberships on the books, their cell phone bills, their Costco and BJ's memberships and everything, and sometimes either mortgages or even like their vehicles, right? And it's like multiple vehicles, and it's like you're the only one driving to the outpatient office, and that's not really critical. So they get credit for those items, because if we were to buy the practice tomorrow or in a month or whatever, we're looking at the next year. Okay, in the next year, this individual's, this car, this membership, and sometimes it results in thousands of dollars or tens of thousands of dollars in difference. So we say in the future, these items are not going to be on the business books. So that actually hits the bottom line. This is free cash flow. The seller gets credit for that. So Scott, long-winded answer. That's kind of why we are using EBITDA for multiple reasons. But you pose a good argument for sure.
And to Scott's point, I think, under that valuation, you're not going to get a big buyer anyway. Like USPH is not going to come in and buy a practice that's under $1 million anyway. It's going to be a private deal. It's going to be somebody who probably has been working for you. It's going to be somebody who knows you or is connected to you in some way. And you're just going to be like, look, I mean, that's what we did. We were a small single location that we were selling off. We weren't going back to Florida anymore. And we're like, hey, you guys have been here a decade. You know the place, you know the referrals, you have everything. This is what the numbers are showing. If I, didn't sell to you, this is my net profit over the next 3 years. Here's the deal. This is what we're going to do. And it was just an agreement. There was nothing complicated going on there. So I would say under $1 million, you're probably just going to be in a private deal anyway. It's going to be an easy one. And so what, go ahead.
Sidebar that's related to this. So another reason why this whole process can be frustrating, challenging for both sides. Tony, so you're in Ohio. You drive around. You guys know a ton of families, a ton of folks. You've been in the community for a long time. There's way more comps. There's way more comparables on houses being sold, right? I bet if I came to visit you, Tony, we drove around, I'm sure you could be like, oh, the Johnsons live there. It's probably worth this much money, or it was sold for this much, or a realtor has a big mouth and they're telling everyone like this, your house is probably worth this because I sold, 2 doors down last year and it was this dollar amount. That's another reason why businesses don't change hands as much as houses. And for businesses, it's a little more private. It's your livelihood. It's your baby. Your home is also very private, but for those reasons, and maybe you can fill in some gaps, but the comps of houses being sold in any rural area, any town, any metro, anywhere, it's just more readily available versus businesses. They're sold less often. They have probably a wider sliding scale of valuation, like higher and lower, and homes are kind of triangulated closer to probably where they should be in any state. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
There's no comps that are, other than when you speak to a broker. There's no comps unless unless Tony, you're like, oh, I knew another PT practice owner in Ohio that had a similar size and revenue. He showed me his numbers because I had known him for 20 years. Here's how much he got. Here's the patient, volume that he saw. Here's the revenue. Here's the adjusted EBITDA. Here's the number that he got. And I'm his same size. I want that number, or I'm better than him because I have all this media and these technologies and treatment techniques and all that. So maybe you can command more. But for most people, they have no comp. They have no understanding. So then they're like, oh, I'm being ripped off. I'm being lowballed by Dave Kittle, or I'm being lowballed by USPH or Confluent or any other big buyer out there. Does any of that make sense?
Totally. And in a minute, whenever you're ready, I'll pull up the Biz Buy Sell website. We'll look at the best available information we have. But you're right. Like in any city, I can go to the tax collector website. I can pull up any home valuation. I can see what, the county records show. I can see what it's sold for. And then you look at companies like what's the big website for house valuation? Zillow. So like Zillow came out and made all this stuff even more public. It was public before, but now it's even more public. I wonder if there's an opportunity there for a true marketplace that looks at and disseminates this information a little more readily. And I wonder if, back to, we're small business owners. We didn't train as business owners. We trained as therapists coming into business. But it's like now in 20, years of private practice, if I did it again, if I did it today for the first time, I would start a brand new business with a brand new tax ID with the intent to sell. And I would build that business with the sole intent to sell. Even though back in the day when I started in 2001, 2002, I was like, oh, it'd be nice to sell. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how to show valuations, how to show profitability, how to do any of that stuff. But it's like, if we did it again, I would build something to sell, and it would be a very different business model than what I did back in 2001 and 2002.
Yeah, awesome. Makes sense.
So whenever you're ready, let's go into the Biz Buy Sell website. But before we do that, just one more kind of wrap it up. What are the main delays that happen that trigger, either a deal to die or a deal to take 12 months instead of 3 months? If I want to go buy a car, we're in the market. My 16-year-old's got his driver's license. We're looking at cars. I go online. I see what the prices are retail. I'm just going to go. I'm going to buy the car. It'll be done in a couple hours. But it's not like that for a business. So what are the main delays?
First one is how long it takes for us to get all the documents and the files, and we have to ask for information and data in waves, because if we ask for everything that we need, it's a huge tidal wave that feels beyond overwhelming and stressful for a practice owner. So it'll be like the first wave, Tony, is like, hey, let's sign this NDA. And then it's like, all right, we need the last 3 years of your tax returns and your financials, right? So like your P&L, your income statement, balance sheet, those financials for the last 3 years. That's like the first thing. Then the second thing is like clinical information, like some of the stuff, like some of the common, like the top, like Sturdy McKee talks about, like the top 7, like productivity, like visits per case, cost per visit, like those common clinical productivity type metrics. Just that, unfortunately, can take a long time. Just asking for 5 or 7 of those. We've had owners, they're like, here's the login to our EMR. Like, we already signed an NDA. Like, you go in and pull it out. And it's like, I mean, that's fine. It's faster that way, but it's like, oh man, like, and then it's like, we need the lease agreement. We need, if it's in network, we need every contract from all your in-network contracts. And they're like, oh, like, I don't know where those are at. And it's like, I mean, this information is kind of important. Like, so if you're serious about selling, we need all of your, insurances, liability, like, your payroll records, like, and asking for those waves of information, like the data requests, is the biggest thing that delays it. That's number one. Number two is, once we get all this information, then we're trying to triangulate the valuation based off of what we're seeing. We're looking at everything. We're looking at Google reviews, Glassdoor reviews. We're looking at the team, like the team, how are they online? Like, do they have an online footprint in any way? Some of that can be signaling. We're just trying to look for signals. We're looking for smoke signals. We're looking for signals. We're looking for skeletons in the closet. Then we're trying to come up with like a number. And unfortunately, a lot of owners are like, well, I'm doing 1.2 million in revenue, so I want 1.2 as my purchase price. And it's like, no, I understand that the revenue number is the biggest glaring number. I get that. That's just not how businesses are valued or sold in this range, like under a couple of $1 million, or like Scott said, like around $1 million or $2 million in revenue. Here's actually how they're valued. And sometimes the brokers help them and they're realistic, and sometimes the brokers are overreaching, or they're trying to ask for a number that just financially doesn't make sense. So those are like the two big ones.
Yeah, and I've got to think having a reasonable broker on your side, like they're going to help you get through that process on the sell side. They're going to help you, know ahead of time what are buyers looking for, what's the best position for your business in the market. Are you going to try and sell to a buyer like you who might be looking at something as a hands-off investment? Or are they going to look at a buyer, a new therapist who wants to be a practice owner, who's going to be the treating therapist in the business? These are all very different kinds of approaches. So let me pull up and let's just kind of go through this a little bit.
And yeah,
All I
Scott,
did for people
Scott,
watching,
due diligence takes time, and that is an understatement of biblical proportions.
and then the emotion, like, I'm sorry, we're crazy clinicians. We get emotional. This is too close to us. This is like a baby that
Yep.
we've poured, years of our life into, and now somebody is going to scrutinize it. It's like calling your baby ugly. Nobody wants somebody to do that, but ugly babies exist. I'm sorry. It's just what it is.
Not mine though, not
Of
yours.
course not. All right. So what I did for people watching is I just Googled Biz Buy Sell physical therapy. And then it took me to the Biz Buy Sell website. And let's take a look at some of these. So like if we go into the first one here, I'm going to click through. We can see the asking price for this physical therapy practice, profitable, well-established, SBA pre-qualified. To me, seeing SBA pre-qualified, I don't think that means anything to you as like I'm not going to say an institutional investor, but that kind of investor. This would mean something to another therapist who might want to buy the business to operate it as their own business. Is that right? Or is there value to you when somebody says SBA pre-qualified?
So it's a good sign. It means that they're reasonable. It means that they understand that a lot of buyers are not coming to them with this full dollar amount in their bank account, and they're ready to just fork over this dollar amount. Yeah, so it's a good thing. But also with a lot of these websites, what I've noticed is it says SBA pre-qualified or owner is open to SBA whatever. A lot of them say that. So it's like, is this just being put on every deal, or I don't know, some of these brokers telling them to put it on there or what? So, yeah.
Okay. So this is Redding, California, $650,000 asking price, $361,000 cash flow. Gross revenue for the business is $888,000. If we look at some of the details, and I think this is really the value that people watching would gain, is oh, that's interesting. So it actually says the name of the practice, Maxim,
which is uncommon. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So physical therapy, exercise, fitness, sports medicine. Seller is stating that they had their most profitable year, 20-year business, gives you information, 5,400 square feet. So, my clinics are usually about 2,000 square feet. 1 1/3 acre parcel. So it sounds like the real estate, there's no way the real estate is included, do you think?
It says what the real estate, it says, is $875K, but then the revenue of the practice was $888,000.
Okay.
Maybe it would be
Two separate deals, maybe.
Two separate deals.
Equipment is mostly newer, in great shape. Please call, text, or email. Shown by appointment only. There's a disclaimer. 9 employees. Facility was built and designed for physical therapy and is clean, well-maintained, top-of-the-line equipment. So, and then it's got a link to the website. But yeah, usually you wouldn't get all this information.
No, this is a good one. Can we just go to the top for a second? I'll show you if you if you were sitting next to me like this, like if I'm going through this by myself, this is some of the back of the napkin math, right? I just want to see I want to just check the temperature of the pool. I want to just dip my foot in. I want to just check it out. Here's what I do, right? So the gross revenue they're saying is $888,000. $888,000. The cash flow is a little over $361,000. In these examples, I'll kind of like Scott was saying, there's SDE, there's seller's discretionary earnings, there's adjusted EBITDA, or there's cash flow. There's some differences, but we just kind of say, all right, we're going to just take this number as is. We're going to believe these numbers. We're going to use the cash flow number as like the net income, the adjusted EBITDA number, right? So we're going to take the gross revenue. We're going to take the cash flow, the 361,000 divided by 888,000. And that gives us a profit margin of 41%. Am I doing that correctly?
Yeah. Yeah.
So Sturdy McKee, my business partner, my mentor, all that, he would, if he was here, he would say, which physical therapy business do you know that does 41% net income, net profit margin? Because where are most practices, Tony, that you've heard of? Or that
I'm going to say they claim 18 to 22%. I don't even think they're at those numbers.
So I agree with you 100%. So they claim to be 18 to 22, 18 to 25%. How is it? So I wouldn't even look at anything else. I would be like, okay, 41% profit margin. Then in this example, I would probably click on the website because I would be like, are they selling like cash laser packages? Like, okay, then it actually might make sense. I don't know. Like I would look, usually these listings don't have the website. So I would have to say like, well, what else in here is showing like the ability to be a service-based business that has, what did it say, 9 employees?
9 employees, yeah.
And has 41% profit margins. So I would probably scroll real quick down the homepage. I would click on services. And if their services were like, I don't know, like cryotherapy, laser, shockwave, stim pod, cash packages that cost this much, linked to social media that was completely dialed in with like Tony Maritato style patient videos and treatments and all that, then I'd be like, oh, you know what? This looks like it could potentially be a business that's doing 41% profit margins. It just, when you're a brick and mortar outpatient office, and if you're 100% in network, it's impossible. I believe it's basically impossible to have 41% profit margins if you have 9 therapists, 9 employees.
Well, I think that's the killer is where are these 9 employees? So we see 2 therapists, a PT and a PTA, which is basically my operation. We look at services. You can see my screen, right?
I can see it. Yep.
Yeah. So basic stuff, bone, joint, muscle injuries, industrial, motor vehicle, some sports medicine, wellness center. But there's not really anything that would indicate, okay,
well, maybe that wellness center part, maybe they're selling, they got gym memberships, they got other things that are part of it, that are part of the whole income.
But still, where are the other, okay, so if we've got these 2 guys, where are the other 7?
So already, like if you're looking to buy this type of a business, right? It's like, yeah, a buyer's going to be like, wait, I'm scratching my head. Like you said, 9 employees, there's 2 therapists listed on your website. So like, that's already weird.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's go back. Let me pull this back up again for Biz Buy Sell. But I do think that, and I'm guilty of it, you got to step back. You got to look at this as a potential buyer, not just, you got to take the blinders off a little bit. So I would want to know, even within the description, it's if we're saying 888,000 in revenue, and I'm saying 9 employees, that's 100,000 basically per employee. Like, I don't see the math working out.
Some of those, 3 or 4 might be front desk, aides, whatever. So they could be lower hourly employees. So I hear
you got to assume their contract. So maybe you got a part-time person here or there coming in, but so give me the information. Let me know more information about it. Let's take a look at another one. Physical therapy.
Real quick. One other thing. Can you just hover back over the first one? So
yeah,
I would say the difference between their cash flow number, which in this example, we'll just back of the napkin math, the cash flow number is the 361,000. The asking price is 650,000. So if you take 360 times 2, they're asking for a little under a 2x multiple, right? So we go 2. Yeah, they're not even asking for a 2x multiple. So the asking price based off of their cash flow, this is big asterisks, assuming their cash flow is this is a real number and legit, the 361, which it probably is not. But if it is, their asking price is under a 2x multiple. So actually, by looking at it in that direction, hey, maybe these sellers are actually reasonable. But we dig in, like Scott said, due diligence takes time. We might find out their cash flow is like 100,000 or 150,000. Now all of a sudden, their 650 is like a 5 or 6x multiple on 100 or 150. You know what I mean? So those are the quick things we look at. But again, buyers, we click on your website, we shouldn't have questions. We shouldn't have like big questions like you have 9 therapists, 9 team members, but there's 2 therapists on the website. Like, you don't think buyers are going to be like, wait, that looks like a little fuzzy. So anyway, we can move on.
Let's take a look at this one. This is closer to your area, Union County, New Jersey. So physical, physical is a franchise. For those who don't know, it's a balance-based franchise, 600 plus locations, turnkey business, physical therapy. Are you familiar with this area? I think I might be further south than you.
It's surrounding counties, Morris County, Essex County. It's not too far away. Yeah.
Okay.
And also, I would never buy a physical because I am such a renegade entrepreneur. Like, I want to use my own playbook. I do not want to play by the playbook of some franchise owner. And they're super successful, but like, I don't want to have to like submit like, hey, can I run these Facebook ads? Can I run these Google ads? They say this and that. Like, can I get this approved? Like, just buying a franchise, I would never be interested in it. But other therapists, they have a game plan that's part of the purchase of a franchise. So for some therapists or some buyers out there, it makes sense.
So this one's saying 3 employees. They're saying 400,000 asking price, cash flow 223. So again, below the 3-time multiple on the asking price, gross revenue 500,000. So we're looking at still a pretty significant, more than 50% profit margin, right? Cash flow,
which it's just not possible in a brick and mortar. I mean,
okay, so let me ask you this, because this is what I would assume. So when I hover over the question mark, it says arrived at starting net before tax profit, then add back in payments made to the owner, interest, depreciation. I'm wondering if the owner is a physical therapist and they're putting back their physical therapist salary. So if I'm in this, I'm one of the 3 employees, I'm getting 100,000 as my physical therapist salary. And then I'm saying there's also 123,000 on top of the 100,000,
which is wrong. You're going to make me jump out of my seat right now. It's wrong because I would need to replace your production, like you treated patients. So we would need to replace it with another clinic director or another therapist or whatever. So the owner's salary does not get added back in if they're doing things in the business. It could be treating, it could be physician relations, it could be anything that has to do with the business. Now, if they're on a beach all day, then okay, some or all that salary could be added back in because they're not doing any production in the business. Most practice owners that are producing, and they're doing meetings, they're doing things in the business, they're coming in, they're talking to the team, they're talking to physicians, they're looking at referral partners, they're doing events, they're doing talks, they're any other things that practice owners do. So you can't add back in the salary if you're treating patients, and if you're producing income, that revenue needs to be replaced by somebody.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. Plus, I would say that owner operator, and we're making assumptions here, guys. We don't know, but I'm just saying, plus that owner operator, if you're doing the marketing, you would have to buy or hire a marketing person to do that. If you're cleaning, vacuuming and sweeping and cleaning the bathrooms, you would have to hire a cleaning service to do that. And that's where I go crazy, because I'm like, look, you don't even have a 20% profit margin. You probably don't have a 5% profit margin, because I know I'm the guy fixing the toilet, changing the water heater, doing, all of these things. So you have to account for that if you're an absentee owner or an investor looking at buying these kinds of businesses. So I was going to try and do a quick Google search to see if I can find it. So Union County, New Jersey. Let's see if we find their, which one do you think it is? Berkeley.
Probably maybe that first one, Colonia. I don't know.
Let's just take a look real quick. It doesn't matter. This is all just for fun anyway. So, I mean, of course, Physical has beautiful websites. They have a professional team. They've got all of the boxes checked when it comes to this stuff. They're going to have great SEO. They're going to do all of this stuff right. What we
There's
don't know,
the downloadable reports that Tony loves.
At least these, I will say, these say understand lower back pain, understand knee pain. They don't say fix or cure or heal or treat knee pain. So again, they're doing it better than most. All right, let's take a look at one more real quick. Let's see what else is out here. And if you see one that looks appealing,
there was one that was like 2 point, I think. Yeah, you can click on that if you want. There was a Florida one that was like 2.5 million in revenue. That was like,
it didn't have much information on the Florida one.
Okay.
All right. So Landmark, I'm guessing that's the name of the company again, which amazing that they're sharing that. Physical therapy practice, Queens County, New York. Asking 610, cash flow 240, gross revenue 600. So they're actually, I've seen where you price it based on revenue, a 1-to-1. So they're kind of in that world.
And sometimes that makes sense and sometimes it doesn't, but some owners will just do it without any financial backing, like, to support it. But yeah.
So these guys are saying 150,000 in inventory, 40,000 furniture, fixtures, equipment. So that's almost 200,000 there that they're saying, hey, we want to get paid for.
Inventory, unless it's like multiple shockwaves that are 70 grand each, or
this says merchandise, raw material, finished and unfinished product. Yeah, let's see what we've got. Profitable, 800 square feet. So this is getting us into a smaller physical space. It doesn't say how many employees up above. Facility been there for years, specializing in physical therapy treatment, back pain, musculoskeletal injuries. Additional income can be generated. Doesn't say it is generated from adding workers' comp, no fault auto, except medical insurance. Location does more than 600,000 a year. 11 to 12,000 a week. Net cash flow 225 to 250,000. Location is fully furnished. Lunchroom, storage area. All the trained staff is willing to stay on. It's a cash cow. Must see location
with 2 exclamation points for each. It's like
absentee, an absentee run for a potential buyer. It's got Tedman telephone number, which I'm surprised that the website Biz Buy Sell would let you share a phone number like that.
Yeah, sometimes they make just asterisks, like it gets blocked out.
Okay, here, 4 employees. So what do you think? Do you know this area? Are you familiar with, Queens County? Is that the same as like?
It's Queens, yeah.
Okay.
Queens. So, it's already small. The smaller the practice, the more risk, right? Yeah. Because if there's 4 employees, if one employee leaves, that's 25% of your payroll, of your workforce that just walked out the door. If there's a click, like 2 leave, and you slice it in half, like it could be 2 therapists only generating 600,000 in revenue, right? Like if they were both hustling, there were 2 therapists, generating 300,000 a year in revenue. the description where it says cash cow with 2 exclamation points and whatever the second sentence said, 2 exclamation points. It's like, cash cow. I mean, it's 240,000 in cash flow, and their revenue is 600,000. How is it a cash cow? A cash cow would have been the other one we looked at, where it was 41% profit margins. If that's true, that would be a cash cow. But this one, I mean, some of these descriptions are just bonkers.
Well, and here's the thing. I mean, and again, not to detract from anybody, I'm looking at the screenshot. I'm looking at the photo, right? That's $150 recumbent bike, a couple TheraBand and used physio balls. I don't see where $190,000 valuation for furniture, equipment, and other stuff is coming in. And not to speak poorly of the practices I've seen in New York and the metro area, but like I could definitely see this being 4 employees, maybe 1 owner therapist, and then, you know, a couple aides. And basically everybody's coming through, they're getting the same thing. It's just, you know, they're billing insurance and who knows what is happening. Not saying these guys are doing that, but saying that I've seen those business models that do exist out there. Looking at the outlet on the wall, looking at the marks on the wall, the carpet, the molding, like.
See, I love it because you're digging into this the same way I would. And if you are gonna sell your home or you're gonna sell your business, is this the type of picture? I mean, if you're listening to this, you have to jump over to the YouTube, jump over to Learn Medicare Billing on YouTube, or the Dave Kittle Show, or PT Pinecast on YouTube. Look at this picture. There is no way, if you're going to sell a business, you're not going to choose this picture. This is the best picture you have. This is the most flattering picture you have.
So it has to put you in the mind of the seller to say, okay, this person believes that this is a $600,000 picture. This picture is going to sell a $600,000, you know, business. So, I mean, it is what it is. This is why I think the profession struggles. This is why I think all of us, but again, we're not business. We didn't go through business school. We're not savvy, most of us. Like, I think this is an opportunity for, you said it. I could see a tech company coming in, and maybe there's not enough like growth here, but a tech company coming in and saying, okay, we're going to blow the doors open. We're going to help healthcare professionals, PT, OT, SLP, build businesses for resale value, you know, right out of the gate. You just graduated. You think you want to go down the business road. We're going to come in. We're going to help you build this business to be sold in the future. And as such, we're going to take, you know, 15, 20% off the top, but we're going to make sure your books are in order. We're going to make sure you have all of your paperwork, that the LLC is set up correctly, that, you know, all of the boxes are checked, so that 5-year, 10-year, 15-year exit, we're planning that today coming out of the gate.
So are you saying that maybe Sword Health or Hinge Health could come in and not just get into house calls, but buy a brick and mortar practice like that? Is that what you're saying? You said tech companies.
Yeah, maybe. I was thinking more like a Zillow kind of company.
Okay.
I think Sword and Hinge are going a different direction. Scott is asking Dave, how many of the practices you buy offer seller financing, or just in general?
Well, I mean, so I haven't bought anything. My board members have bought and sold things, but we're still looking at deals. Deals fall through. So with seller finance, though, there's a good amount of owners that understand like that. Typically, we would want maybe sometimes 25% of the capital stack to be seller finance when possible. We will sometimes use that as a bridge. Like, we're like, okay, we believe it's worth this. You believe it's worth this. We can give you like 90% of this cash at close. We're going to have 10% held in escrow for like Medicare audits, any retroactive payments, whatever, for like 12 months. And then this other 25% will be on standby for the life of the loans, or maybe it's, you know, in 2 years or 3 years or whatever. We can start making those seller finance payments to you as well. So some owners are understandable, and they understand seller finance and how that it can lower their their taxable income, because they're kind of deferring some of that purchase price into the future. We'll usually we have to agree to some interest rate, or we would agree to some interest rate on those payments into the future. Then there's other owners that we've spoken with, and they're like, "Oh, I heard like terrible stories about seller finance, and it may not happen or whatever." So they're like, "I want 90% of the cash at close. I'll wait 12 months for the other 10% or whatever. I know you want to hold 10% in escrow, fine." But some owners don't want to do seller finance at all. So yeah.
I wonder too if there would be an opportunity. And I don't know if this is what happens in other businesses with roll-ups, but it's like, can we just get a professional CEO who's going to come in? Because I think the biggest hangup is, like, again, I look at my business, my organization. I want to make sure my people are taken care of. I want to make sure my patients that have been with me forever are taken care of. But at the same time, I could probably be talked into staying on to treat and be part of it, but I need a CEO to come in. I need somebody who's going to make real business decisions to come in, who's going to take the potential of this business and realize that potential with real things. They're going to hire staff. They're going to hire clinicians. They're going to make the marketing changes that need to be made for this to be a real business. I think the deficiency in most of our smaller businesses, we don't have real CEOs in place. And so if you can do a fractional CEO where you say, okay, this guy's going to come in, this girl's going to come in, they're going to run the business like a real business. And in 12-month to 18-month time frame, we're going to get a full turnaround into something that has real value. I think there's an opportunity there. What do you think about something like that?
Yeah, I mean, the challenge, like you said, you kind of have to get a business like out of like the shallow end of the pool, and you got to grow it to the point where then you can attract some CEO like that, or maybe have some they get a salary plus they get, I don't know, 10% of net profits, annually or whatever. So that would kind of incentivize them to grow the whole business. And then you, the therapist out there, you could just, you or me or whoever, like, could be just focusing on the content side, the sourcing deals, trying to get more deals. And then you have this fractional or part-time or eventually full-time executive that's kind of, maybe they kind of work their way up in USPH or Select Medical, one of these other companies, but they wanted to go somewhere where they actually had some skin in the game, where they get salary plus some of the upside of like some profit share or whatever. So I think that could work.
I think you just need to get the crazy, insecure, fearful owner out of the way. Like I think as much, and you've said this, as much as you want that person who's selling the business to stay on, in theory, because there's, their connections and their referral relationships and all that stuff, most of the time they're also a cancer that's holding the business back. That is threatening. When we see like Undercover Boss and some of those other, I was watching Dave Ramsey, no, not Dave Ramsey, the cook.
Gordon Ramsay.
Yeah, I was watching some of these guys, and I'm like, the owner is the problem. Get the owner the heck out of there. And you've got a raw material. The staff wants to do better. The business has potential. The owner is the one that's poisoning the pool. I think a lot of times we just need to get rid of them, get them out of there, and let us turn this into a real business. So let's think about parting shots, unless there is anything else you wanted to touch on.
No, I'm good. What do you got for parting shots, or you want me to go first?
I think the main thing, sorry about the phone ringing in the background. The main thing is we need to know what we want. Frustration happens when there's a misalignment of what we think we want and what we're actually working toward. Therapists come in, they think they want a profitable, successful business. What they really want is patients to tell them how amazing they are, and they want to feel good about their clinical skill. Those two things don't always align. I've got a patient who says, I want to be able to throw a football with my grandson. And I say, okay, we got to get strong and lift heavy things. And they say, well, I don't want to do that. Like, that's what we see in the clinic with patients. That's what we see behind the desk with business owners. We need clear alignment. If the priority is financial security, then we might have to table some of the other desires for a while. Because if you get true financial security, you can go back and treat patients however you want and not charge them anything. You could do it for free. It could be a genuine passion of yours. But don't confuse your goals and objectives with your actions. Like, your actions have to reflect what you actually want. What do you got?
Oh, I love it. And also thank you, Dan Vapney.
Hey,
He said he's under contract with a practice and they have 10 years seller financing. Awesome. And owner stays on 3 years. Assuming the owner is great and, you know, great for morale and all that. That sounds like a slam dunk. Dan, congratulations. And also reach out. Let me know if that closes. You know, I'd love to, you know, take you out for a beer or whatever it is. I think you're in the area in Long Island or
I
something.
met him at PPS this year. We were sitting at a table with Jerry Durham and a couple other people, and Dan came up, and it was great to meet you.
Did he, because I know you're from Long Island, Tony. Isn't he Long Island or where's he at?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if I remember.
I thought he was. But we got 22 people live here. If you guys are live, just comment below. Let me know what state you're listening in from or watching from. Comment below here. Parting shot. I think the more that you owners out there, like, talk to other owners, talk to other buyers, look at content, some of mine, some of the others. But that's why I'm putting content out there, because I want to show, like, here's some of the realities. Don't always just believe like whatever your broker says, and your broker like, oh yeah, we could get 7x, we can get 7x multiple on this, like, no matter what. And then the broker charges you, 10, 20K or whatever for like marketing fees and like, directory fees to list on their website, or, to help you with, set up DocuSign to set up your, non-disclosure agreement or whatever. And then like a year or something goes by and like you don't sell your practice, or you never sell your practice. So just be aware. You can look at my content on there. You could say, hey, my content might be biased because I'm on the buy side, but look at all the content that's out there. Go to YouTube, go to Google, see what else is out there. And Scott said, so Scott's tuning in from West Palm Beach, Florida. But yeah, that's my parting shot. It's just check what's out there. Try to get those comps as much as possible. Talk to other business owners, other practice owners that sold to some of the big ones, USPH, Confluent, Motion. Who are the other buyers? ATI no longer buying practices. Athletico. Talk to some of those practice owners. See if you can get an understanding of like those comps and all that. Not just what brokers say, not just what I say only, but also not just what brokers say. So that's my parting shot.
All right, guys, 8:30 a.m. Tuesday and Thursday. Go check out the Dave Kittle Show. Go check out PT Pinecast. Learn Medicare billing. We'll catch you guys next time.